Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining this live C-suite exchange for the CFO 100 in partnership with Soldo. I'd like to welcome some of our CFO 100 judging panel to the screen now, and we can get started. Brilliant. Sacha, Clive, Huiming, thank you so much for joining HotTopics and Soldo for this C-suite exchange. For the live audience watching this, for any audience members who'll be watching this on video on demand, my name is Peter Stojanovic. I am the editor of HotTopics, and delightfully HotTopics will be with Soldo enjoying a CFO 100 campaign and award for the first time ever. And many of you I know recognize that HotTopics has a fulsome community for tech leaders, CIOs, CTOs, data, digital security leaders, and an engaged B2B marketing community too. We recognize, however, that the value that the C-suite holds and its thought leadership and movement forward has to include more of those executives from different functions. And the CFO, of course, is critical, not just to the financial security of an organization, but its growth trajectory and success too. So I personally think this is an excellent opportunity for us to not just highlight the CFO role, but really isolate the top 100 globally who are doing some fantastic work for the organizations and for their function too. Now, in this C-suite exchange, we have, as I've mentioned, three of our wonderful judging panel. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves quickly, and then we can jump onto the panel discussion itself, where we will really isolate what it means to be a CFO today, what skills are needed, what therefore the criteria we should be looking for, what the judges should be looking for within the judging of the CFO 100, and any further thoughts on the CFO role in the future. I must add, if you have any questions of us and the judging panel throughout this conversation, please do add that into the comment section. I will be manning it whilst our judges are talking. So, I will be able to put them to the CFOs now. So without further ado, why don't we hear from the judges? Sacha, would love to hear from you first.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Sacha. I'm the CFO at Soldo. I'm Swiss born and raised, spent 3 years in the US and relocated last November to the UK to pursue this opportunity as a CFO at Soldo. And I'm happy that you have me today.
Thank you, Sacha. Huiming?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Peter, for having me, for today's conversation. So I'm Huiming, everyone. So this is, I'm currently the Europe CFO for Illumina. And we are the biggest genomics DNA sequencer manufacturer. So before Illumina, I spent 13 years in GE and GE Healthcare. So I have so far been working in the UK, China, and US throughout my career. So looking forward to today's conversation.
Brilliant. And Clive?
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Clive McTavish. I'm the CFO at the British Red Cross. Before I was doing this job, I was the CFO at British International Investment, the UK's development finance company. And before that, I was the CFO at Hotels.com and Expedia Lodging Services. So,
thank you, Clive. And I must say that one of our other judges who's hoping to join us today can't make it, Helen Ashton. Helen Ashton is a FTSE 100 executive leader, mentor, and advisor too. She has extensive experience in the CFO and now CEO position too. So, of course, her perspective will be missed this afternoon, but no doubt we'll be hearing from her at a later date in this campaign. Without further ado, then, conscious of time, let's kickstart with, I think, a pertinent question, which is your personal interpretation of the CFO role as it stands today. And Sacha, just to keep, as it were, the order, why don't you go first and share with us your personal interpretation of that CFO role?
Yeah, first of all, we are all CFO on this panel. So I think we are working there because it's an amazing role. This is really the first thing to say. This role is amazing. We can be the co-pilot to the CEO. We can help navigate through hard times. We can help grow the business. So I really think that this position is key in every organization. this position as well is the position where it is required to bring some calm into an organization. At least I'm coming from a background of technology, SaaS companies, so very agile, small company, moving and going very fast in all directions. So bringing this calm in the leadership suite is something that I enjoyed personally. And I think this kind of checks and balances and calm perspective is something that CFO should bring to the organization. Another thing that really makes a huge difference in the interest of the position and the joy at work is the fact that the CFO position is cross-functional in reality, because from the CFO position, you have the ability to look down and across the organization into each division and help each division basically to have them being performing and have them contributing most to the journey of the organization. So this cross-functional savviness is something that I think makes the job very interesting and is very helpful. Another thing that I think is great as part of the role responsibility of a CFO is the fact that there are this interaction with external stakeholders, being shareholders or board members or committee members or whoever it might be. And those interactions basically representing the company and basically showcasing the performance of the company under the best lens is something that really makes the job exciting. So in a nutshell, the purpose here is to pick the award for the best CFO, and I think a CFO is really a wonderful position.
Fantastic. Nice note to start on, Sacha. Thank you. Huiming?
Yeah, maybe I keep it a bit, concise, if I may. So I think for the best CFO or the CFO that I'm looking for is actually 2 words: critical friends. Okay, be the business critical friends. And then the reason I say so, because, friends means, like to Sacha's point, being able to support all the initiative that the company wanted to drive, being the co-pilot, to your CEO and so all the other business functional leader, but at the same time having a critical lens to look at things independently and also from a distance. Because a lot of the time as a CFO, we are actually playing a role that are safeguarding the company while at the same time steering for growth. So in this case, how can we maintain a certain level of emotional detachment so that we will be able to add value, to the CEO and also to the functional team, and let them know what is not working, and then be brave and have the voice to really highlight what are the things that the team may be ignoring or didn't pay attention to. And then one personal story as well, at one point, my CEO is asking me, Huiming, do you think finance, it is a leading function or a supporting function? So I think the answer for that is a typical both, right? And that is where the critical friends comes into this picture, because we are at the same time supporting, being a friend, but at the same time having the critical lens so that we can drive some changes and lead the enterprise forward.
Thanks, Huiming. That was very concise. Thank you very much. And that was a great pivot point to think about the dichotomy between those two support and leadership functions. Clive.
No, so look, it's been really interesting. I certainly would agree with both Sacha's sort of business partner framing and Huiming's critical friend framing in terms of that core relationship with the CEO. So I won't build on those, but I'll just sort of definitely call out. I think that is such an important part. I think probably in terms of the dynamics of any organization, then I'd probably point to 2 things: sort of growth and sustainability. And in terms of both of those agendas, you often talk about the latter, the sustainability, are we being efficient? Are we being productive? Those sorts of dynamics. Or, how are we going to meet targets? The sort of finance person sort of trained in that sort of framing of, this is how we think. But I think the growth agenda has become much more important over recent years. The ability of finance leaders to be able to understand entrepreneurship, growth, ambition, to be able to support that through more dynamic reporting, forecasting, planning operations. I think that's a really good emerging role. And I think certainly as I look at that, it is, right up there now with that sort of sustainability, the longevity of an organization as well. So I'd point to those two things, as well as, like I said, supporting what Sacha and Huiming said about, business partners, critical friends.
Fantastic. And, across all three answers, we've already got quite a well-rounded description of a typical CFO. I mean, Sacha, you mentioned they've got to be quite sober individuals or calm individuals and cross-functional. Huiming, I've already mentioned your critical friend dichotomy adds that perspective, which I think is fascinating from a human perspective. And then Clive, of course, growth and sustainability, of course, that the differences between growth and profitability, depending on the market and the sector and where we are in our economic model, I think it has to be discussed. Could we agree, therefore, based on those interpretations of the CFO role, what you think, therefore, the core skills of a CFO ought to be? And from that conversation, we'll then jump into the criteria. But I'm going to open that up to any of you who wants to jump in then. Based on what we've just heard, what do you think we should list as those core skills of a CFO?
Yeah, well, perhaps before going into what we discussed, there are some underlying basics that needs to be met, obviously. So I would say I would start with one thing, which is robust technical skills, kind of as a foundation on which then it can be the other skills can be stacked on. But I would really start with this one.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, certainly the most inspirational CFO I worked for actually wasn't a trained accountant. But I think it's interesting that he had a strong empathy for understanding the individual skills that the teams had underneath him. And I think if it's kind of like, if you haven't done that training, you've really got to want to understand those disciplines. And I think particularly as I look at it, I started off in audit, which is where a number of people do. And it means that you have a great understanding of, the power, say, of an internal audit team and what it can do, what it can bring to an organization, because of the way that those teams think, the processes, the policies that they're looking through and helping you test. And I think if you haven't got that understanding, you're not going to get the best out of that team. You're just going to be seeing it as a threat. Oh no, they're gonna misjudge me or whatever. We're actually the ability to really use teams like that to sort of go beyond just the hygiene checking, but actually to help your business forward. So that's understanding what teams can do is the important part.
Yeah, I wanted to add on that as well, actually, because at a certain level, I think the technical skill is kind of a given, so that we put that aside. And then I agree. In addition, I think what is more important is having the right talent on the team. Because sometimes as a CFO, you may not know all the accounting rules, the details, technical tax or transfer pricing. But if you are able to hire the best talent onto your team and put the right people in the right position so that you can then have the headspace to think about strategic matters, is another very important attribute to bridge the technical skills gap versus the strategic thinking side of the story.
One of the things that when I spoke to Helen, the judge who couldn't make this afternoon's call all, was her perspective on utilising data to be both forward-looking, predictive, but also reflective on what's happened since. Sacha, you mentioned the technical ability that Huiming you feel is part and parcel of the CFO role. But many of the C-suite have had to really reevaluate their data literacy skills, or at the very least their team skills too. In the context of a CFO, what does that mean?
I think we have to keep learning, in a way like any other C-suite, because the whole world is changing, right? The only one thing that doesn't change is change. So we have to keep up So nowadays, I think Clive mentioned, sustainability, ESG, corporate social responsibility is a constant topic on the data side, data governance, AI, machine learning, all those are all on the horizon. So in this case, I think as a CFO, similar to any other C-suite who are on the governance and on the board, we have to make sure that we are up to date, okay? And there are many different paths for us to up to date, sign up courses, staying relevant, with our peers so that we learn from each other and keep up to date on what is going on in the industry, on how we are applying all of those so that we can bring the value to the finance function and to the business. So that actually leads to another very key point is having the mindset of an entrepreneur. Okay, so in this case, it's not an entrepreneur, because entrepreneur is like startup that you're going to be the CEO of your own firm. But I think as we are working in a certain organization, having the mindset of entrepreneur, which is really, really important, so that we can bring the best technology and new technology, and having that startup mindset, despite that you are still in a certain organization, to drive things forward and apply that venture capital thinking, private equity thinking, despite that you may not be working for one of them, but in a normal, let's say myself, in multinational corporation, that is still a very key thing and differentiate a good CFO versus the rest.
Sacha, Clive, any builds from Huiming's? Well, I want to say soft skills, but it's a bit more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I like the way Huiming is framing it. I'm working for a CFO, for a VC owned company, so I know how this is, and I completely relate to what Herrmann said. But when it comes to data, I think we are very well prepared as a CFO to deal with data, because we always had a lot of data, even before other teams had the data. I think the thing that now is a bit different is that the data has to be available quite instantly. And this brings a lot of complexity when it comes to the data structure. Who is the data owner, and who shares the data, and what is the level of transparency in the same within an organization, and how do we make sure that at the company, when we say, the number of whatever sales or booking is this, that everyone agrees that this is a number, and not having one team saying, hey, you know what, I have this number when it comes to the sales of June. Oh, no, I have this number because just it comes from a different database, or it comes from a different system. So I think with this huge quantity of data available, bringing this data together is something that is key. Now, what I'm saying is possibly relevant, but I don't know how to flip this into a key skills or criteria for the purpose of our conversation. But I would say that perhaps, as Huiming said, it's about showing if the candidate to this award has a track record of being able to build team across different roles, because this is one thing that I think is really relevant, having the ability to build team and retain team. So perhaps this is a way we can try to look at the key skill here.
And I suppose, Clive, sorry, carry on.
Oh, no, I was going to say, you made a really interesting point, Sacha, about, data, single source of the truth. That's certainly something I recognize throughout my career in terms of how different things come to, confuse or obfuscate a position sometimes. But I think actually it really also talks to, the role of the CFO, or certainly within the finance department, of being able to sort of help interpret information and make, what decisions are we making on the back of that? And I think particularly, let's face it, is, Peter, you started this by talking about sort of the backward look and the forward look. It is like, okay, translating that understanding of what's happened. Well, how are we set to go forward? Do we understand that? How's that setting a strategic agenda? Is that helping us meet what we want to do strategically? Are we interpreting that correctly through our projections or whatever? And I think that core role in curating that understanding of the business so that when something happens, it's like, okay, that wasn't expected. Was the expectation rubbish or was the performance rubbish? Right, oh, that's really gone well. Well, that's just because we lowballed something. And I think actually that's such an important skill that we bring, particularly in this age of very fast information. It's actually the ability to understand. And funnily enough, I used to work at the Financial Times, or I was the financial controller and the finance director for UK and Europe. And certainly what we recognize as a news organization is that there was a lot of news, news wires and the breach of the start of the internet, you were firing stuff off on but actually our value was in our commentary and our analysis and understanding. And those couldn't be instantaneous because obviously someone had to read and interpret information and then share. And I think actually that's still the role for a CFO, is that ability, within there to be that understanding. What does that performance really mean? Is that helping us achieve what we want to do? Are we heading in the right direction?
So it's a storytelling attribute, or I think it seems to be the underlying or overarching perspective there. And that's really interesting, I think, also because one thing that I know many audiences will ask themselves is, what happens when we split this by regional sector or industry? Do we think about different skills for the CFO given the context in which they're operating? I'm not sure if you have thoughts on that, especially when you think about the types of nominees and nominations you're hoping to see on the deadline date of the 30th of August.
Yeah, I think that is a super important point, Peter, because just like any organization has a life cycle of it, right? From startup, scale up, peak time, mature, and then maybe towards the end of the life cycle. So I think recognizing the organization on where it is, where they are, it actually requires a different skill set on the CFO, attribute to be able to steer them. Because I can imagine, a CFO in a startup environment, finding the investment, trying to make sure cash flow are still, surviving for the company is probably like paramount, versus a CFO who is steering a company who is already scaled up, very mature. So in this case, it's more about optimization, right? How do we drive the company forward and doubling profitability and revenue? So in that case, or probably less focus on the cash side, because it is considered a bit safe environment when the company is already in the mature stage. And versus some CFO are probably those that are trying to wrap up an organization when they are in trouble or in liquidation mode, and then the skill set to require to restructure the business, drive change forward, is then very different. So I think when we are looking for applications and criteria, that is a very critical point to consider what are the skills that is matching where the organization that he or she is serving.
Clive,
I think that makes total sense. I've worked in challenging media companies, the FT, Dow Jones during the financial crisis, where, the agendas were on restructurings, finance efficiencies, operational challenges like that. And then a high growth environment, hotels.com, where we were growing 40% a year over the first 18 months when I joined that. And so it's about expansion, it's about supporting growth, and so, there's no one right answer. There's no one right set of circumstances that say, this is what you have to be or have to do. I think also if I then move on to CDC, which or now British International Investment, a UK development finance company owned by the government through the what is FCDO, then DFID, with a huge weight of governance. You have the great and the good forming the board. You have key civil servants and ministers turning up to meet you. So actually, that was a very different agenda. It was neither sort of growth nor sustainability. Actually, that was governance heavy, and recognizing that you have a very important role there in being the steward of an organization. You've got to impel trust, ownership of the numbers, but actually it's, audit quality, valuation discipline. It's, are we doing all the right things around risk, transparency, those sorts of areas. So very different turfs, very different CFO roles, but actually it's the ability to, in that set of challenges, to make sure that you're able to deliver the right, partnering, critical friend stuff that, Huiming and Sacha talked about earlier.
Yeah, I think same as you, Clive. I'm coming from initially the audit world, then I moved into internet, got through the bubble, then in technology, VC-backed companies, going through the times where the money was very cheap, then to times where, there is no more money anymore. Let's reduce the size of the organization by half of it, and now in stabilization. So, and this is just a sample of basically what happened in smaller company. And as Huiming said, there is the other piece of the world, which are the largest organizations. So I completely get that it's very difficult to define a list of or short list of attributes of the CFO quality or abilities. However, I just refer to one discussion that Clive, Herrmann, and me had, is around the growth mindset. And in reality, in whatever organization you CFO is working, I think we can look on the career of someone. We can look and see where there are additions to the role, because this is kind of a proof that the individual has a growth mindset. If we see the role evolving by adding some new responsibility year after year, then I think it's kind of a proof that the individual has a growth mindset, which is, I think, a key thing, especially those times.
Totally agree. Because if you can have the growth mindset, you can quick learning, adapt yourself. So that is very key in today's environment, right? Whether you are changing company or you are staying in the company but driving the organization forward under variable times and challenges. So that adaptability and growth mindset and being able to change according to the context, right? So actually in the past 10 minutes, what we're talking about is the context and situational leadership as well.
So if I can ask all individually, if there's one thing in a nomination that you're looking for, whether you're reviewing their context, whether you're checking out their kind of online presence and the work that they've showcased across LinkedIn and elsewhere, what would that one thing be that would catch your eye and think, yes, this person has a great chance of joining the top 100?
It's really hard to get down to one thing. But
that's even unfair. That's even unfair to ask just one thing. You could have three things, perhaps.
If I wanted to put in that one thing, okay, the number one thing that I will be looking for is the enterprise mindset. So when I say enterprise, means beyond finance, because typically, right, CFO, we are the head of a finance function. Then we think, okay, how to maximize the functional impact. But for me, the best CFO is already beyond just the finance, is to think about what is the right thing for the whole enterprise, or you can call it organization, but like the whole enterprise. And that comes with a multiple thing, right? Being the cross-functional glue, okay, that piece everything together. Think about strategic thing. Okay, what does the company need? Okay, being the critical friends is one of those. But behind all of this is actually to think beyond your own function, but think about if you are the owner of this whole enterprise, what would you do and what would you suggest? So evidence to demonstrate that you have the enterprise mindset and enterprise thinking beyond your own function is the biggest thing that I will be looking for.
Thanks, Herrmann. I know it was a bit of a rotten question, but look, this is my role. I've got to drill down into the specifics here. Sacha, Clive, if I may ask.
Yeah, let me start or continue on this. I completely agree with Huiming, and I think I would. My number one would be very close to hers. It's a cross-functional ability or cross-functional ability to be the glue between the different functions. I think this is it, because part of the CFO role is basically helping others to make their job, supporting others, and being a team player. But sometimes team player does not mean a lot as just a buzzword. Team player in the sense of CFO is basically cross-functional understanding and ability to help the others and make it happen. And I think this is my one thing.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly will concur with the others. I think ultimately this is about understanding your environment. It's almost like understanding the cards you've been dealt with, and understanding how to then go and play them in terms of the best, how best to make that happen. And I think it's two sides, it's understanding the situation and then your role as you then have that. So yeah, it's an opportunity, I think what we've been saying is there's a variety of things that you can be. I definitely like, growth as a principal enterprise. I think actually certainly that is something I feel very strongly about as an attraction. We've got to help companies grow. Ultimately, each company is very unlikely to be able to sustain itself these days with all the technology changes that are going around. They've got to be able to reinvent. But there are many other agendas that crop up. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how people can position that.
Excellent, thanks all. And I think that cross-functional piece is particularly pertinent too, because it has to be said, many of the audience members today on the VOD shortly, and of course when it comes to nominating, won't actually just be CFOs. There'll be members of the rest of the C-suite that'll be putting forward their peers in the CFO community, whether it's their direct CFO colleagues or friends and family that are in the CFO position. So it'd be really interesting to have a think about, for us to consider, therefore, that many of the viewers listening to this will be thinking about this in the context of not being a CFO, critically analysing how they work with their CFO or how their friends and family operate as CFOs, and whether many of this matches with that viewpoint. So again, cross-functionality, being friends and the support for the business, you're most likely to see that when working closely with them. So that's fantastic, thank you. And again, for the audience members, we will be sharing directly, therefore, the criteria based on this conversation onto the landing page with the nomination form. So when you come to complete your nomination, do check that out before submitting, just to make sure that it aligns with that. And as a reminder, the closing date for nominations is the 30th of August this year, of course, in the next couple of months. Before we just in the interest of time, before we close off the formal part of this panel, I just want to ask your thoughts on the future of the CFO. It's always a delicate conversation to think about the future of anything, given how mercurial the global economy is right now, and a few other things. However, we're quickly accelerating into Q3, Q4 of 2024. 2025 is not far behind. Many different stress points present themselves. Many opportunities are presenting themselves too. And of course, to each of your points early on in this conversation, the CFO has to be adaptable. So therefore, how do each of you think that the CFO will adapt and evolve in the near future, let's say into 2025?
Well, no one jumping in on that one then. Well, I'll go then. I think certainly as I see it, what you've increasingly seen the role of the CFO come over, during my time as a within finance of my career, you've seen the role of a more sort of commercial, strategic business partner than before, which was more of a hygiene role, making sure that the numbers were correct. It was an audit principle. It was defensive mechanism. So I think, CFOs have secured themselves a place, as the business partner, the critical friend that we've been talking about. And I think that's such an important piece. I think the going beyond that is actually really helping the links into the rest of the business, making sure that you have the empathy and understanding of the roles that also occupy that top table, whether they're in sort of sales or operation, marketing, HR, IT. It's the ability to really understand those other agendas and to think how, teams beneath who may be business partnering those teams or, doing other work. It's that understanding of how to take those agendas forward. Are those people getting the high, the quality support that we were talking about, the critical friend, the business partner is so important. I think individual leaders need those foils, and sometimes a foil that's not necessarily just your number two in a department can help that out. Can we really curate that cross-functional understanding of the organization? So there's my pitch.
Thanks, Clive. Sacha.
Yeah, maybe from my end, I can articulate the future of CFO maybe in the framework of the up, down, and around. Okay, so up is basically managing up, but in this case, how do we be the architect of the organization and position yourself that's similar to what I said beyond finance function? How can we partner with the CEO to be the architect of the organization in the context of the future of work, future of life, because the whole society is marching towards that future digital age. People live much longer, new generation coming into the workplace, remote work. There were so many things. Okay, so what does this mean in the workplace? And what role can CFO play together with the CEO, together with the chief people officer and other functions is very key. So I think that will be the up angle. And then the down angle is like, how do we really drive the talent pipeline? Because when we say, okay, the best CFO, the one elements of it is how do we also make our team the best mini CFO, because they are all working, either in my context, I am the regional CFO, like my team is supporting similar role in their sub-region, in their country. So how can we as a CFO leader cultivate the environment to have the team that can also serve as a mini CFO, no matter what level that they are playing a role in the organization. So upscale their capability so that the whole organization from top to bottom can then elevate together. Okay, and then the around is what we all talked about. Okay, it's cross-functional thinking, working with them. So probably I will not repeat myself too much. I think that is the up, down, and around. So that thing to think about what future we should equip ourselves with.
Fantastic, thank you, Sacha.
The question was around next year, basically, how the CFO position should evolve or what the focus should be. And I think I'm going to be a bit more pragmatic, perhaps. When we look at what's coming in front of us, we have an economy that is still not booming, let's call it at least this way. We have a lot of uncertainty coming from elections all over the globe and different political things that are happening. So I think one of our key mission as a CFO for the end of this year and next year is basically making sure that we put a lot of energy in helping the business to grow, because we still have this kind of mindset of, companies should grow, and people or stakeholders are expecting companies to grow, especially when it comes to a company of our size and having our profile, meaning startup, fast-growing companies. And we see out there that the expectations are, you have to continue to grow. But we see that companies are having a hard time to grow. It's getting more difficult to grow. So I think as a CFO, we should make sure that we put a lot of energy and emphasis to facilitate marketing teams and go-to-market teams, generally speaking, to be successful and helping them, sometimes at the cost of our own organization. Because we may take some shortcut that are perhaps a bit dangerous. But I think this is one of the focus for next year. Then I think as well, because the money is expensive now, we have to think about efficiency. And I think the technology stack of the CFO is a place where there are good tools out there, and a bit of work to have the right technology stack to be efficient is key for a future success, especially because the money is expensive. So we have to make sure that we, with the same team, can basically achieve more.
I think as a wonderful segue, Sacha, thank you all for that panel. I think I want to move on to some of the audience questions, just in the interest of time. Now, we've had a few of them I can see on my channel. I've grouped them because some of them are very, very similar. One, perhaps inevitably, grouping is around AI and your thoughts collectively on how you're managing or expecting risk versus reward when it comes to the investments you're thinking about or actioning in a Gen AI context. Sacha, you just mentioned the tech stack and the investment portfolio around an expensive money market condition. I wonder if any of you could share what you're doing or thinking or what you've seen in relation to how CFOs are interpreting the relative value of AI right now and in the future.
So I think for me, AI is already live, in our organization, that we use AI in finance to facilitate our forecast. So for me, in broader context, AI has a huge potential to be a productivity liberation tool, because once we leverage those statistics model, machine learning and statistic, forward-looking insight, that it can liberate a lot of our time, behind the scene to crunch through numbers. So that is for the benefit for finance function. But at the same time, when we are applying those forward-looking machine learning or AI model, is also a liberation to our commercial organizations, that they can focus more in the field on selling instead of in spreadsheet or in some certain other tool to do their forecast. So that is AI is already live in our day-to-day. And as a CFO, we have to ensure that we craft out money to invest in those areas and embracing the pain while we are implementing those technology. Because before it gets to the ultimate outcome, the initial phase is pretty painful, because you wanted to make sure we understand the output of the AI, which a lot of the time is not so straightforward, and the accuracy may suffer at the beginning. But that is just a natural phase before we can get to the outcome. So acknowledging the fact that this is the journey that we are in, and in the background, we have to ensure data infrastructure is ready before you implement anything. Otherwise it will be garbage in and garbage out. So data will be very, very first step before we implement any of those new AI fancy tech.
Excellent, thanks, Huiming. Again, just in the interest of time, Sacha, Clive, I'll come to you for the second cohort of questions that we received, perhaps interestingly so, and perhaps in a nice way too. The grouping here is about fostering ethical behaviours in teams. We had a few questions around making sure team members act ethically. How do you ensure you keep momentum on ethical behaviour and actioning, especially when there's so many different rules and regulations happening? Sacha, Clive, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I'm happy to take it to start answering this one. I think it takes a bit of organization and structure, meaning I think that there is a requirement to have a clarification about what an organization thinks is ethical or not through a code of conduct or a set of rules. And it does not need to be a very extensive set of rules, but having a few pages of describing what the company values are and what is expected in terms of ethical behavior is something that I think is very key, because then it's kind of anchoring the set of rules, and then it allows interpretation, obviously. And when it comes to interpretation, I think there is only one way to make sure it happens, is have the right leaders with the right behavior, because all this is about role modeling.
Clive, any builds on that before we close this C-suite exchange?
No, I think Sacha really nailed it. I think role modeling is so important. I think it's absolutely right that we set a tone and we really celebrate things that we believe in, and we call out things that we don't. And I think certainly where I am now, the British Red Cross, we set a high bar in terms of behaviors. It's all part of who we want to be, because we're a humanitarian organization. So the support for our staff is at the centerpiece of what we want to be, as well as as in terms of our role on the outside. So that's a really important part. I think actually just swinging back to Huiming on AI and stuff, I'm very much in the privileged position of not leading to be a leader, on AI. It's not going to be a sort of competitive advantage necessarily to me, but absolutely you want to stay close to the evolutions. There is something that comes through that can mean that we can help build a more sustainable organization, a better one in terms of smarter. Can we help more money go to the things that we need? So I'm in this sort of lucky position there of not necessarily needing to be first to market on something, but actually a sort of fast second piece will be very acceptable in terms of how we can think about new technologies. So again, I think there's a different time and a place for everything. And again, it's really understanding what your set of cards look like and what you need to be playing. So.
Fantastic. Well, look, Sacha, Clive, Huiming, thank you so much for your thoughts, considerations, experiences, and interpretations today. And again, for any audience members watching live or on demand, the CFO 100 nominations are, of course, live. The close of nominations is Friday, 30th of August. We've just heard from 3 of our judges, just the kind of the fulsome attributes that a CFO needs to enjoy today in order to be successful, and in order, of course, to be seen as leading. Not least cross-functional. We've heard about the technical skills they need, the curation of a great talent pipeline and great team management, the ability to be adaptable and to be comfortable with change, entrepreneurial and intrapreneurial, great storytelling attributes, and a growth mindset too, as well as being a good role model for their teams and the wider organization. And I'm sure there are much, much more, but I'm sure we'll agree, we'll probably see some of those in the nominations to come. If you're watching and you're going to nominate yourself, good luck. If you're nominating a peer, wish them the best also. And on behalf of Sacha, Huiming, Clive, Helen, who isn't with us, and Soldo, thank you very much for joining this C-suite exchange.